Town of Walpole, Notice of Intent Conservation Commission, public hearing. In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, Town of Walpole Wetlands Protection Bylaw. Notice hereby given the intent of Keolis Commuter Services, LLC, to replace a deficient culvert at milepost 21.06 of the Franklin Branch, Walpole. Plans are on file with the Conservation Commission Office. Public hearing on the above matter will be held room 112, Walpole Town Hall, 135 School Street, April 11th, 2018, beginning 7 p.m. All interested person requested is present. Time is now 7:02. We have some things to read into the record. So we have is the
Sir,
town engineer.
is your microphone on?
I don't know. Is it on? Is it on? I don't know. Is it better?
Yes.
Okay. This is from town engineer. Reference made to the plan and notice of intent for the above noted case, and the following comments are made. Within the notice of intent, section 1.0, page 1, it indicates that 2 deficient 16-inch pipes are being replaced by a single 24-inch diameter pipe. Requested that the commission ask the applicant to confirm that the capacity of the new pipe will at least match the capacity of the 2 existing pipes. Within the notice of intent, Exhibit F, Alternatives Analysis, section, page 1, second page, number 1. It indicates that 2 18-inch pipes are being proposed. It is requested that the applicant confirm what replacement piping is to be and then confirm capacity as requested in number 1 above. Within Exhibit E, it mentions that there are stone box culverts present. It should be clarified whether these are being replaced, whether they're being retained, or whether they are not part of this submission. It is also requested that an as-built be provided to this department for our permanent records if such a plan is prepared by the applicants. So, is there anything else? Do you have anything else?
I did forward the applicant those comments from the town engineer, and they forwarded some answers back. One is a typo that will be corrected, and the stone culverts are not going to be removed. We've got the same correspondence from Kyle.
Yes, my name is Clary Kutu. I'm representing Keolis. We did receive the town engineer's comments. For item number 1, we responded back. The current 16-inch culverts, for the record, at full capacity, represent a cross-sectional area of about 402 square inches. Our proposed 24-inch culvert, RCP, Class 5, reinforced concrete pipe with a 3-inch embedment. It's about 420 square inches, so it's a very de minimis change with no impact to flow, anticipated impact to flow.
Okay. Do you have anything else you want to tell us about the project?
Yes, absolutely. This is Keolis exercising an essential government function for the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority. We have under our operations requirement to replace culverts and structures along the right-of-way. We have anticipated that there's an outage coming up, so we have presented before your commission 2 other culverts that we wish to replace, and we received orders of conditions prior to today. This is our 3rd culvert within this section that we want to be able to replace with a 24-inch reinforced concrete pipe to ensure that, you know, the drainage conditions for the new track that are coming in as well with the Franklin double track, necessary support to comply with the drainage conditions that are being improved along the track. So This project, as is presented to you, is a limited project. And for the record, I want to make sure that we understand that Keolis, as well as MBTA and DOT, we have the exemptions of the transportation bond bill to execute regular maintenance requirements and maintenance for repair, replacement of parts for bridges and culverts. However, given that there is significant amount of work along this stretch, we did continue with an NOI, presenting an NOI to this commission. As a project present, I'm sorry.
Wait, what's an NOI?
No,
Wait a
yeah.
minute, wait a minute,
Notice of
hold
intent.
it,
I'm sorry.
hold it, please.
I'm sorry.
Address, applicant is making a presentation. You have any questions, address the board chair, please. Go ahead.
So a notice of intent. As I mentioned, it's a limited project. We do not anticipate any kind of impact to resource areas, only to the buffer zone, with a very limited permanent impact of the structure. And I'll take any questions if you had a chance to review the materials.
What are you looking for?
The other- is that-
The minutes?
Yep. Okay. Anything else? Okay.
It's a very typical project,
Yeah,
open
what-
cut.
What we'll do is, we go through the commission with any questions or comments, and then we'll open it up to the audience for any questions or comments. And we ask you to identify yourself for the record. So, Landis?
You didn't have any, you didn't have agenda and
Yeah,
that?
Yeah, that was in here, that's what I thought I got. What's yours? What's that over there?
This is mine.
That's mine, but that's okay. So I did go out and take a look at the location of the culvert, with the engineer, Kyle. And, it's very similar to the last two culverts that the commission saw, that they're going to be removing the old culvert within the track and then replacing it with a new culvert. And there's really limited work within the resource area. It's all taking place on the track.
On the buffer zone.
In the buffer
Correct.
area, yep. So I didn't really have any concerns. The new culverts that are going in will be an improvement to what's existing, which is clogged up and.
Right, 90% of it is obstructed.
So
Okay.
that's it.
Roger?
As I look at this, the culvert size is remaining the same.
So currently, we have two 16-inch cast iron pipes. We're going to replace it with a 24-inch reinforced concrete pipe.
But it's the same size?
Well, we maintain the invert at the same elevation that the current culverts are. There's a change in 18, square inches in terms of flow, but yes, it's comparable to what is now. And it's going to remain in the same length. So we're keeping the same length. It's not extending beyond the existing length of the pipes.
With the changes in rainfall over the years, that the maximum flows are increasing, minimum flows are decreasing. Have you taken into consideration the 100-year and higher storms?
Well, what we're doing to this culvert is within the constraints of the right-of-way and the conditions that we have now. Changing the hydrology would most likely, if we put a much larger culvert, which would most likely result in higher impact to the wetlands and a more alteration. So we keep it to the extent that we can to the current size of the culvert to ensure that we minimize the impact to the resource areas. But no, we don't consider changing it to adapt to future conditions.
That seems like a potential mistake, but, okay.
Betsy?
So I have a question. Is this an intermittent stream that is?
Correct.
That is traveling through here? And so maybe a question for Landis too, but was there some question about whether it was intermittent or?
No, DEP had questions of if they should have put land under water body, checked that box under the notice of intent and said how much they were going to be altering. But first of all, it's a culvert, so there's no land under water body in the culvert unless it's an open body culvert. But because it's a intermittent stream that is dried a lot of the year, it's not wet long enough to be developed land under water body. And the report, they
And we have the
sent in
opinion
a
from DEP on
report
that.
from Mary Rimmer, who's their environmental person, and
Okay, that's it for me.
seemed to be
thanks.
satisfactory.
Al?
Well, it looks like DEP doesn't have any concerns over this, so,
It was just the land underwater.
yeah. My concern is that most of these culverts are half full of sediments and things, so they're not flowing anything. So if we replace the culvert with a new one, hopefully it'll be empty and allow the amount of water that was designed for it to flow through, so
That
I
is
don't-
correct. That's the intent.
I don't have an issue with that.
Question, which line is this on?
Franklin?
Which line?
Oh, you mean track?
Yeah,
Well,
the Franklin line?
yes, Franklin
Okay.
line, yeah.
There's a proposal to add an additional track?
Correct, and that's the project that's coming
there.
after me.
Okay, and what about this culvert?
This culvert is going to improve the drainage conditions under the track, so it conveys water from one resource area to the other.
But I only see one track.
Right, so when my colleagues come, Holly Palmgren is here, she can explain to you how the double track project is going to be
Is there a double track going over this culvert?
correct.
Well, then why isn't it shown on this plan?
Because this plan is strictly the notice of intent for the replacement of the culvert, and we don't have the project engineered. We're not the engineers for the double track.
I
read
understand
that
that,
question.
but it doesn't look like there is provision for the second track over this culvert.
Right, so when Holly comes back, she will represent to you the plans, the engineered plans. So currently, the way it is laid out is the existing conditions. So we are going to replace the culvert, and then maybe in the fall, I'm not sure what the timeline is, they can tell to that. Then they will issue, they will install the second track. So when we're done with this culvert, it will still be one track.
'Kay.
So we didn't want to misrepresent that.
Say that
So-
again?
so wait a minute.
You-
We're
the-
related projects. but-
Excuse me, please identify yourself, please.
Yeah, Holly Palmgren, MBTA. So there were two tracks along this entire alignment, which I'll show in our prior, my presentation after hers. But one of them was removed in the past 50, 60 years.
So this is capable of handling two
So this
tracks?
has enough space
Yes.
and
Yes.
That is why. they-
Yes.
There's
Yes.
room.
That's all I
There's room.
wanted, that's all I wanted to know.
Right.
Okay.
We used to have
All
two
right.
tracks.
Yeah, no, if this was, okay.
And I believe after the project is finished and the double track project is finished, there's still, room within the head wall and the tracks. So it's designed to meet
It's-
the requirements for the,
you're not
for
gonna
the
have to
track,
You're not
for the
gonna have to
track
revise-
structure.
Revise this plan
No.
to accommodate that, okay,
No.
okay. All right, anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Please identify yourself for the record, please.
Elizabeth Hunter, 492 Lincoln Road, and the culvert you're going to replace feeds into the brook that runs through my land.
Okay.
And I have two questions.
Mhm.
The first one is, you said it's an intermittent stream.
Correct.
I've lived there for 23 years and I've never seen the stream run dry. Low, yes, but never dry.
Okay.
So you're going to have water going through. And the other question I have is when the survey was done, engineers' flags turned up on my property probably 30, 35 feet in from where the right-of-way ends. And I was wondering why I hadn't been notified that you'd have people driving around.
So, first of all, I apologize I didn't notify you. Usually when we have surveyors out there, if they're going to cross over property, they usually notify the abutter. Maybe they didn't believe that they were crossing into private property, so I apologize, they should have.
It's a forest. I'm impressed that they got through, to be perfectly honest.
Well, Mary Rimmer is a wetland scientist, so the flags that you see were done professionally by a wetlands scientist. So she's in the woods all the time.
It wasn't easy getting in there.
Yeah.
My question is, do they have to stay or can I take them down?
No, they have to stay, because those flags delimit the area of the wetlands, and the project needs to be built around those constraints. So the flags, the little pink flags that you may see, or yellow, I'm not sure what
The
color.
pink ones, yellow ones, and red ones.
Yes, so those flags would need to stay.
Next time somebody comes out, will they let me know so I can come up and ask?
I'll make sure that's done.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay.
Can I ask a question, since the abutter brought up that she's never seen the stream dry, so it's not shown as a river on the USGS, it's shown
Right,
as
stream
intermittent.
stats presents it as an intermittent
And
stream.
stats.
There is a very high groundwater
Right.
table there, for sure. So we've noticed that. And one of the things that this culvert project replacement will do will be to alleviate, now it really currently ponds right next to the tracks, and that's a very, that's very bad for the track structure.
I believe.
So you want water conveyed away from the tracks. So currently, that's one of the things that will improve with this project, for sure.
And in addition to that, during the construction of the culvert, you may have cofferdams to hold the water back, but then you'll pump it over.
Right, so,
Water will never be backing up on property
correct,
for any
It would
period of
have to
time.
back up on the other side of the tracks,
on the inlet.
because I'm downhill from it, and it flows down ultimately to the Stop River.
Right. But they'll maintain the flow by pumping
Right.
it from one side to the other so that it will be continuously moving.
So I have a sort of follow-up question, maybe just for my own information. So I know that you can determine something as an intermittent stream by looking at the USGS map, but sometimes we have more stringent conditions or requests about looking at the stream during some number of days under some weather circumstances.
Well, it would
Is
also be the
Keola-
stream stats analysis, which is what was brought
Right.
up, that it has to have a certain watershed size.
Right.
Oh, okay.
There's a watershed
I
area.
brought it here for, if you don't have it, I can bring it.
No, that's right. I was just wondering, so it's exempt from using that particular,
It's not exempt,
It's the watershed size.
If you look at the USGS and it says it's intermittent, but you may think it's not intermittent, you can
Yeah.
go to stream stats, and in the wetlands protection regulations, it says it has to be a certain size and a certain flow.
okay.
Right. But I have further information here, Betsy, if you.
No, that's okay, thank you.
It doesn't even go under.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, so we'll make a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? 400. You have an order?
Yeah, I don't have any particular additional orders.
Same order as the other ones.
Yeah.
Okay, so someone make a motion then?
Move that we use the same order as the other ones.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 400. Thank you.
Is that all, Landis? You received everything from Kyle for the abutters? All right.
Yep, they just voted the order, so.
Okay.
you're good.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Did you find your,
That was you. I think I had mine. You stole mine. Yours was under the file. We're all set.
Oh, sorry.
remove those, just so we can see the, whatever's on the,
Do I need to put them?
we put them on the floor. You wanna remove those, you need help?
Oh, okay. I'll have them move the other boards after.
We have to share plans. Do we have those three?
I
No,
got
don't.
one, I got one here.
But they gave
Okay,
us.
I don't need one, so,
I got-
Alex, you wanna?
They
Good enough.
have, they have.
Oh, you have
We
one?
got them.
Okay,
I
all
got
right,
one here.
great, good. Everything's good.
Sorry.
Now, what we need to know is what sheet they're on.
Yep.
Okay, yep.
We're on sheet 3.
Yeah,
This one, we have it here.
Walpole notice of intent Conservation Commission public hearing. According to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act. Notice hereby given the intent of the MBTA to install a second track along approximately 3.3 miles of the Franklin line in Walpole. Plans are filed with the Conservation Commission Office, room 212. Public hearing, the above matter will be held in the main meeting room, Walpole Town Hall, 135 School Street, April 11th, 2018, beginning 7 p.m., 7:10 p.m. All interested persons requested to be present. Time is now 7:25. And we have comments from the town engineer. Reference made to the notice of intent plans to the above noted case. The following comments are made. It suggested that a sketch plan and key plan in additional notations on an existing plan be included, which ties the proposed track plans to correlate the track work to Walpole streets with more detail for ease of reference. Requested that the final as-built be provided to this department for our permanent records. They're prepared for this project. Do you have a copy of this?
Yes, I did. Landis
Okay.
forwarded that to me. Thank you.
Okay.
And so, I had half-size printed. I can leave this full-size, so I handed out to Landis, and I believe she gave you guys all copies. Again, Holly Palmgren, MBTA, Environmental. This is the key plan that shows these reference the detail plans and where they are in relationship in Walpole. And we also submitted a revised plan, which when I get to the details, we took out a retaining wall in one of the locations. So before I get to the detail plans, I just wanted to go through, I have a quick presentation on why we're doing the double track project. So it's along the existing Franklin commuter rail line. It is, well, oh, they can't see. I can move it however is easier for them. So right now, it's single track through Walpole and Norfolk, which limits our operations sometimes if you ride the train. I'm sure you'll notice sometimes the trains have to stop. This is where the only passing siding is, so the other train can pass. So this will allow operational flexibility for the T. Switch to that one. So the Franklin double track project, obviously not all of it is in Walpole, but the whole project is 3.27 miles of double tracking through Walpole and Norfolk. And as I mentioned, it talks about operational flexibility. So this is the project will from Norfolk Station all the way up into Walpole. This is the full project. As I mentioned, oh, I know. It's like the project's over here. So what I wanted to mention, so my file, you saw Keolis come in. They've been in before for some culvert work that you did, that you approved in this new culvert. I have another filing on your agenda for after this for some grade crossing work. I have a filing for the double track work. So there's a lot of work going on in Walpole. So double track. This is not part of the Foxborough pilot project, which is its own separate project. You've probably seen some poles going up possibly along the alignment for PTC, positive train control, which is also happening along our entire system, partly in Walpole. Keolis is doing the culvert work, which they've presented to you as well. And for this, the double track project is not doing any grade crossings. There is a separate grade crossing project being done for safety enhancements over at Summer Street. So these changes are not going to change how fast the trains go, how many trains, or what's happening at Walpole Station. It just makes operation a little bit easier and less likely for delays. Wanted to mention, because this is not part of the double tracking project, which is the West Street Bridge. The whole area that is currently slated for double track did have 2 tracks in the past when it was originally built. One of the tracks was removed, and we're reestablishing that. So West Street Bridge did used to have 2 tracks on it. It doesn't now. It needs a little more work, so that is being done as a separate project, as the bridge project. It is along where we're doing the double tracking, but it will be its own project. And I can leave this one up later, but there's an email and phone number for anyone who has any questions for what's going on with the double track project. This went out with the NOI filing as well, the email and the phone number. Dave Perry, who is the MBTA project manager for this, is the one who answers the phone and answers those emails. So that's kind of an overview of the bigger project. And I also wanted to say, because I know that the town has expressed interest in the Foxborough pilot project. I do have a contact information at MassDOT if people have any questions, because again, that is not part of the work that we're doing here. So if I can get to the double tracking, finally. So as the engineer had requested, we took and overlaid where all of the plans are so you can match them up, see where they were in town. And I did submit a small size. I can leave these full-size land, so at least you'll have one full-size copy. So basically, where all of the work remains within the existing right-of-way, and is just establishing the second track where there used to be a second track. So again, it's along the whole alignment, and you'll see we do come within wetland areas. Work is within the buffer zone. We've shown erosion controls on the plans where work is within buffer zone areas. So also wanted to mention, and this is an engineering quirk, that the north on these plans is down, which is not how you're always used to seeing things. So just for your reference, so you can see where we are. I don't know if you have any particular questions with the work. I mean, I have all of the sheets.
Paige, can you tell us what number you're on?
Sure. So it starts at EN03, which, if you look at, so basically the plans, the way they run from this end all the way down to the Norfolk line. And if you see on this plan, I mean, obviously they're at a smaller scale, but these are the wetlands along where all of that work is happening. So you'll see this stretch does not have any wetlands. The wetlands come in here, and where we have wetlands, we do show the erosion controls where that second track is being installed. And again here, wetlands, erosion controls. There are long stretches of the double track work that is not within resource areas as well, but they're on the plan, so you could see the entire length of the project. Go to the revised plan that I sent. Oh, we didn't get there yet. So Keolis's culvert is noted on this plan. You'll see this big box. E06 is the plan that it's on. EN06. So this represents the filing that you just heard. So I don't have the details of their culvert on our plan because they don't have the details of my double tracking project. But as we mentioned before, there were 2 tracks there. There's room to put 2 tracks back, and we have coordinated with Keolis to make sure that, you know, they do their work. When we come in and put the second track, it all works together. And then the revised sheet that I just submitted was for EN07.
Holly, can you just explain, I think on 6 again, where
Yep.
the culvert was, it was my understanding that some drainage
Yes.
system was gonna be put in?
Yes, so in this location, you done a site visit out there.
Yes.
And looked at that. I wasn't able to make it, but yes. So there will be, it's noted on this plan, trying to see, as a perforated underdrain. So it's this line with these little triangles, which then would outlet where that culvert outlets.
So currently, there's a ditch
There's a
along
ditch
the
along
edge
this
of the
right-of-way.
right-of-way,
Yep.
and that'll be replaced with a pipe. Perforated
Yep.
pipe.
Yep, and we did do the drainage calcs for that, and our typical underdrain is 12 inches. We've upgraded this to 18 inches, just given what we think the amount of water is that's out there, as you saw.
And is that the only stretch where that's occurring?
So there is underdrain along a lot of the right-of-way. This part's not near wetlands, but yes, it's underdrain, which then would outlet there.
And so is there any area within near the wetlands that you're going to be changing from a ditch to a underdrain?
To an underdrain.
Or is it just along?
Nope, that's the only location that's
Okay.
currently a
All right,
ditch that's
that was my
becoming an
understanding.
underdrain,
Okay.
yes. So yes, you can see this underdrain comes here and then connects into where that culvert comes out. And the change on EN07 is the original plan that I submitted showed a retaining wall, which we have removed. It's now just going to be a slope. And it's going to be 1.5 to 1 slope in that location. So it's at station 1122. So if I go to the old plans, we had a wall. Yeah, see right here. So if you see right here, it says proposed retaining wall. It's that dark, dark line. We went back and reevaluated and determined that we could do a slope there and took the wall
And that's
out.
on the other side of the wetland, so it doesn't impact any of the wetlands.
It doesn't impact into the wetland. Nope, the
right.
work is just within buffer zone. Yep. And in the plans that we submitted to you, there are details for erosion controls. We have both details for straw bales and silt fence as well as filter tubes. And this detail shows that perforated pipe drainage that we showed you. This is just a standard detail, so it says 12-inch minimum. This one is 18 inches in this location, given the amount of water.
Landis?
I don't have any specific concerns because they're really not working within the resource, altering any resource areas. My question at first was just to go out there and look at the ditch to make sure it was a drainage ditch and not a resource area, and it is a drainage ditch, and that the closing it up with a perforated pipe wasn't going to impact the resource areas. I don't believe it will be. So That's all I have.
Okay, Roger?
The total right-of-way hasn't changed any, right?
How wide the right-of-way is? No.
Width-
The
the
width
width
of
of
the
the-
right-of-way is the
The
same.
width of the elevation for the tracks?
Right, so we stay within that, right. Right now, if you look at it, I think there might even be a photo of these road ones. It almost looks like along sections of it, it looks like you could drive a car down there. You know, they use it sometimes as an access way. So there is space within the existing right-of-way to put the second track.
And the elevation is the same? on the
Yes.
tracks?
I had to look to my engineer,
The
he's shaking his head,
bed
yes.
is the same, I
Yes.
would imagine it would be. Back many moons ago, when I was younger and blueberrying up in those tracks between the two bridges, the two overhead bridges, there was an area which was covered with a couple of rocks which had the most beautiful water for drinking and cleaning the blueberries with. Do you know where that is?
I do not know where that is. Sorry, if he can introduce himself, this is my.
Yeah, are you, sir, my name's John Orison, and I work as an engineer for MBTA. And the area that I'm thinking you may be thinking about is where West Street Bridge crosses over the tracks.
I hardly hear you, sir, but,
Here, you can come up.
My name's John Orison. I'm an engineer working on the project for MBTA. The area that I think you're maybe talking about is an area where West Street, of course, crosses the railroad many times.
that's right.
And there's a bridge that's an overhead bridge, which is West Street. And down in the rock cut, as you go through that rock cut, there's a area where there's some old, large cinder blocks or concrete blocks. Is that what you're thinking about, or was it coming actually
No,
out?
this is before concrete, I think.
Okay, well, they could be stone masonry blocks, but they're,
Well,
But-
these were large stoves that you could get your hands a cup down in there and get that water. And it was absolutely pristine. It was the most beautiful, cool running water through that whole area. And the blueberries in there were fantastic. But I was just wondering where that is. It was between still the West Street Bridge. West Street is known for its railroad bridges. But the one was up the end of West Street, top of the hill, and the other one's going up the hill. We're right in that middle area. And I'm just curious as if there's anything going to happen to that wetland in there in that area. And whether that falls into the calculations of your water flow.
yeah, I've walked a project for different months in terms of the time where the rock ledges are, where the railroad's down below the bank. I would have to go back and look at, we have a videotape that we took a truck and drove it down the railroad, and it has a videotape that tapes everything. So you could look at it like every foot, and it could be something that I could review for you to see that area.
It'd be interesting because there was flow in there, and I mentioned earlier, we're concerned with these maximum flows due to the wetland, due to the rains, and things of that nature, and also for the general protection of the wetland as well.
Ollie, we're actually installing, where there's cuts, we're installing that lateral pipe, which is going to improve the drainage of the flow.
There's also a concern that is access to the trains for fire protection for railroad, from the standpoint of fires all caused by the railroad or maybe off the railroad and getting the fire apparatus in there. Now, that goes into the fact that can affect the wetland as well.
Access by Walpole fire into the right of way?
Well, we've had troubles getting into a lot of the lines, particularly the midfield line, you know. It's quite a difference when you have native boys and going on the fire department and one of those from out of town that didn't grow up here. But still, it's the access and the damage that was caused getting there, and the rain and the fires that can be caused by the tracks. You know, I'm told that there's been a number of fires up in that area.
Okay, I'm not,
I'm not.
Not recently, but
go ahead, if Clary might know.
What are the federal rail, again, this is Clary, could you?
will you use the microphone, please?
So there's always a risk, right, on a railroad track to catch fire because there's sparks when the rails, trains go by the rails and the friction. However, there is a requirement that vegetation is cut back and that debris is removed to avoid any kind of hazard that may impact the safety of the tracks and also thereby the communities adjacent to the tracks. To minimize the potential of fire, what the railroad does is maintain the areas free of vegetation along the right-of-way, debris, fallen down branches that may cause or may catch fire. So that's how that area is controlled. That's how we manage the safety aspects of the right-of-way. There's always potential for brush during very hot seasons to catch fire, but it's minimized by us being able to have a good shoulder width within the track area and also eliminating the vegetation, the dry vegetation and fallen vegetation along the tracks and the shoulder areas and within 10 feet of that. So that's kind of my response.
Anything else on that? Roger, you got anything else?
No.
Okay.
Can I just say, I would just suggest that maybe you touch base with our fire chief to see if they have any concerns with the second track going on, which would, you know, affect them and the firefighting, perhaps, as a courtesy.
Betsy?
Yeah, so I have a question about who is responsible for cleaning out and maintaining the culverts, because we've had a presentation by Keolis, we had one by MBTA, and it seems like somebody has got to be responsible. And I got to wondering because buildup of debris has been blamed for some of the culverts failing.
Correct.
And so it sounds like maybe there isn't anyone responsible?
Well, yes, Betsy, we are very much responsible. We have over 900 culverts, around 700 miles of tracks. So we inspect them annually, and that's how we determine if they are failed, determine whether they are failed to replace, like the ones that we are replacing here, were under those conditions, whereas they were either clogged, very old culverts, stone culverts, clay culverts. So we annually inspect them and we classify them, and based on that classification, then we determine which ones are a priority for replacement. One of the things that we need to ensure is that when we inspect them, they're clear of debris. Vegetation that's over accumulating the infrastructure is really hard, so sometimes clearing that vegetation, trimming it back is really critical.
Thank you.
Anything else? Al?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. Anyone in the audience has any questions or comments, please identify yourself for the record. It's in the front here.
If you could come up to
Come
the
up to the
podium,
mic,
I know
please.
it's a pain, but just so that it gets recorded. Thank you.
Sure, Brenda Mostage, 460 Lincoln Road. I just had a couple of questions, and I apologize if one or two may have already been answered, but I came in after the first presentation started. So, but what I had for questions coming while I've been here was, can anyone say why the second track was removed? It used to be there, it isn't there now? I mean, do we know, were there any problems that led to its removal, or?
No, I mean, it was removed before any of us
were working for the railroad. It was moved back in the 50s and 60s.
So is there any way we could get an answer for that?
I think.
I can answer that.
I think it was a tax issue, that the more that the railroad had for property, that increased their assessment. And at that time, I believe it was Penn Central was the
Yeah,
owner.
yeah.
And they went bankrupt, so that in order to reduce the so-called tax burden, they pulled up the track years and years ago, the other track.
That?
Yep.
Okay. All right, great. That was one thing. Two, I know you've been talking about the culverts, and again, I missed the first part of that, and sorry I did, but, so I'm trying to understand these culverts. I know that my immediate abutting neighbors have them, but I haven't lived in the property long enough to know exactly where those are located underneath. And so the double track that you guys are proposing to put in place, if I live on Lincoln Road, so where does that track come closer to my property or further from it? Because I couldn't understand and I didn't see your picture.
It's right next to it. It's parallel to it.
Well, I understand that
right
it's next to
adjacent.
it, but is it gonna be next to it, closer to my house, or further from my house?
And,
It's going to be, with Lincoln Road, it's going to be closer to
It's gonna be closer to my,
this side of Lincoln Road.
I live on Lincoln
Now
Road.
you can
I
show us
can't
where
tell
your
you the,
house is.
sure.
There's
Okay, so,
town line.
okay, so I live
Be careful about what's
about, like one of these houses, probably one of those houses.
Yeah, so the crack is going to be built on this side.
So it's gonna be closer, so then I guess, I know that there are culverts going in, but how are you guys gonna ensure that I'm not gonna get more water and wetland, drainage into my property? I've already, since I purchased the house 13 years ago, I've had to put in an internal and external French drain, so I just want some assurance that those are going to be sufficient, and that I'm not gonna run into more issues with drainage because you're adding something that's going to.
Sorry, you missed.
That's why I said I missed part of
Yeah,
it.
no, so they're doing the culvert work along
Yeah.
this stretch.
So again, Clary, so the culvert is not intended to change the flow to the point where it can cause any significant flooding downstream. Nor it would represent a change in the flow so that upstream the watershed dries out. So it's meant to maintain the flow as it currently exists. It will improve the flow by alleviating now what is currently in the pipes, because you have two 16-inch cast iron pipes. The flow is significantly obstructed. So if you're upstream from is she upstream from the culvert? Downstream, so she's like Elizabeth, downstream from the culvert. What you may be seeing is more a groundwater level, high table. But we don't anticipate, because this is not a perennial stream, that you will significantly have any impact at all. It's not going to affect the flow to the point where it will flood downstream anything. Does that make sense?
It does, but I'm also looking at it like, so there's just going to be more weight, pushing down on the water table.
No, it's not changing the invert. Currently you have two cast iron. We have a 24-inch, so it's.
I mean the weight of the second track.
Oh, the weight of the,
Yeah.
so there you go.
So, yeah, so that's what I mean, like how.
It shouldn't, I mean,
It shouldn't, but-
we're maintaining the same elevation, we're maintaining the same track structure, we're just improving and adding on to the pre-disturbed areas. So, you wanna answer, from
Just,
within the engineering?
Yeah, I could maybe speak to it from an engineering perspective. If you have the train going over the track, you have two rails, and the way that the weight of the train goes out is at a 1-to-1 weight distribution. And then the undergrade of the track structure is set up so that it distributes the weight very quickly, so it doesn't go into the ground. So the track
Okay.
structure itself is dissipating the weight of the train as quickly as possible, because if it goes further into the ground, it creates a mud condition.
Or it deflects the track so that
Yeah.
it can cause a
Because
derailment.
that could actually pump water up if it goes into the ground, so that's why the design is sufficient where the
It's
the
not-
track
The
is
tracks
really
are not
floating
laying
on.
right on the ground.
Yeah,
There's
no,
a
it's floating.
substructure and then the
Yeah.
ballast that's on top of that.
It's floating in rock, the track is. It looks like it's sitting in the rocks, but from an engineering perspective, it is able to knock the weight distribution out.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else?
I'm hard to understand, but if you
No,
stand.
no, no, it's easy to understand. I just, you know, it's unfortunately for me, a wait and see kind of thing. So, I mean, it's just
Do you
a
have
wait
any
and
other,
see.
do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I also wanted to know, when are you planning to start this and how long is it gonna take? So,
I can do that for you.
Go
too.
ahead.
The engineering drawings are being finalized, and we're going to be putting together a bid package that goes out to qualified bidders. That process is going to be this summer, and then we expect the construction to begin sometime in the fall. And the project has a duration of 18 months. So the end of the project is scheduled currently for December the 31st, 2019.
Mhm.
And will it be happening, sorry, will it be 5 days a week, like, or 7 days a week, or 6 days a week? What time will it start? What time will
We
it
don't
end?
have that, yeah, I don't have
Those are
that
things that as
information yet.
neighbors, we're gonna wanna know.
And as the project moves forward, we would have more of those details.
No.
All right, anything else? Yes, here? Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't do this before. Elizabeth Hunter, 492 Lincoln Road. I understand about replacing the culvert. It worries me a little bit about the pipes that will replace the water that sits in the ditch. Partly because I think that's maybe where you wash your blueberries, because my kids and I do that every summer. And it's up a little bit towards Walpole Center from where they're going to replace the culvert. But my concern is the amount of water that will flow freely into the stream and down into the wetland, which is off my kitchen. And at the moment, I live in a house that was first built on the site around 1730. It was added onto over the years. And I have 3 sump pumps that produce water from the ground that goes into the wetland, as it should. But with more water coming down the stream, isn't that going to potentially put more water in my basement?
There's not more water that's gonna be coming down the stream. The water that currently goes there now is now gonna continue to go there. Right now, it just flows in an open ditch to the stream and under the culvert. It's gonna be in a perforated pipe that will dissipate some of it in the ground and flow to the culvert and go into the stream.
It just sounded to me like they would,
I'm not
same
sending
amount-
you more water.
You're not sending me more water.
Correct, that's one of the requirements of the culvert replacement as well as, the stormwater management.
Will
with
there
the
still be a
ditch.
place to wash the blueberries?
I'm not sure where you're washing the blueberries, so I can't answer that, and hopefully it's not on the right of way.
There's currently a lot of duckweed there, I wouldn't recommend you wash the blueberries.
No, but if you, here's your culvert, and up a little bit, there's a place that's always clear, even in the summer.
Up towards the center.
Up towards the center. And there's there's a big piece of stone that goes over the stream. It was like a little bridge.
So that's the stone, Landis, that you saw when we were out there. And you're asking if that's going to change?
Will there be more water going under?
No.
Okay.
The flow is gonna improve in terms of the conditions that, the intended purpose of the pipe right now, so.
So the wetland will not be getting wetter.
Correct. Well, I can't answer in terms of what the wetland itself is going to suffer over the course of its evolution, but what we're saying is that the surface water
That is
and
going
the
to that level.
intermittent
Will not
streams
increase.
will not be impacted by what we're doing.
Okay.
Either by what the project of the double Franklin track is going to do, nor the culvert itself. We replace hundreds of culverts, and it's really important to maintain the consistency of conveyance of water from one side to the other. because we don't want to impact not only downstream, but we also don't want it so that it can create an issue for the track structure. So that all kind of, ties into how we design it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, sir.
Bill Abbott, 694 West Street. And I have two questions. Between the two bridges starting near the Little League ball field where the road goes over, there's a ditch that runs basically that entire length. Will that also be, have a pipe put in it and covered, or?
There will be a lateral pipe placed in that ditch, yes.
And that will connect to the, because one of the culverts was basically in the area of the Little League ball field.
One of the earlier, yeah, one of
Yes.
the ones
Right.
you're doing.
In that area and I'm on the side where the, I guess it would be the north side, so you're putting the tracks closer there.
Yes, sir.
Lots of trees have grown up, particularly up towards people's the backyards. Will they all be taken down? Because right now it, sort of blocks the sound a little bit. Or I guess will they take all the trees that they can, or will they take only what they need?
So, like many of the improvements that MBTA and the operator of Keolis are doing is to ensure the safety of the tracks and the structure. Unfortunately, a lot of the trees which have canopies that overhang, if you will, over the total infrastructure of the right-of-way, including the shoulders and the ditches, present a significant risk for fire hazards, as we mentioned earlier, for slippery rail, for line of sight and visibility. And it's very important that we maintain those areas. So what we do is we look at the right-of-way from boundary to boundary, and then those trees that overhang at an angle over will be trimmed down.
Mhm.
Sometimes what we do is we reach out to the abutters and let them know, is it possible for us to cut down the tree? And sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they say, can you also cut that one and that one and that one? And, but the idea is that we're not just randomly cutting trees, we're really selective in terms of what trees are being cut and how. So with the idea that the right-of-way, when you look at it, is fully clear from shoulder to shoulder, and sometimes
straight up.
10 feet out, so that the
So would
line of
that
sight is
10
not
feet,
obstructed.
would the 10 feet be onto people's property?
No.
No,
we-
it's within the right-of-way itself.
we
So
line
when
it
you
up
say
as-
between the right-of-way and then you said 10 feet more, that's where I was
I'm
confused.
sorry,
Yeah.
from the track
The
area,
tracks.
that's what I meant.
Oh,
From the
okay.
Which means
shoulder.
10, right,
All right.
From the shoulder.
10 feet.
And is the right-of-way marked in any way at this point, or
No.
we won't know until
So,
someone decides it's
I mean,
right here?
on these plans, the property boundaries, on the plans that were submitted to the Conservation
Correct.
Commission.
correct, if you were interested, you can see the boundary
All
lines.
right, well, I
And
could,
then we use those boundary lines to the extent that we can, so when we
Right.
go out there, they stand in the middle of the track with a GIS, geocode locator and line level, and then they mark out, based on the, the plans that we have, to kind of map out how far they can go from the center line of the track, and then, they mark up and they either trim all that side if the trees are way beyond the right-of-way. And/or if there's a very significant tree with a high canopy, they will reach out to the abutter and ask.
another question, right now, the track is a certain level, and they've put ballast and welded rails over the top. And then there's this area where you'll have the second track, which is considerably lower, and then there's the ditch. Will the second track be at the same level?
Yes.
It will be at
All
the
right.
same elevation as the existing
All right.
track.
Okay. The other question that I had, and it's, and I think it was right about where EN 04 and 05, it's the West Street Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And it mentioned increasing the vertical and horizontal clearances.
Yep.
I'm on the Sewer and Water Commission. There is a sewer pipe that goes through there. those abutments are, they're old, it's just granite blocks and they just rest on the ground, and I'd be concerned if you start realigning or increasing the clearance. Are you aware of those pipes and,
The project is aware of the pipes. They haven't started the design. They're still doing a type study on what's gonna be done over there.
okay, because I know there was a real concern when they were putting the pipe in, based on the fact that those granite blocks were just set on the ground,
Right.
that if you start digging, we could collapse the track. We didn't do that, of course.
That's a
But
good
once you
point.
start doing it, you could also impact the sewer, so.
Right, I mean, the likelihood is most of our bridges that are being rebuilt, we do new abutments behind the existing abutments. That's typically how they're done. But again, we don't have a design yet for this
All right.
particular West Street.
Well, I'll look at your
And
plan after you're through, so we won't take up any more time as to
Okay.
where my section, the section I'm
Oh,
working.
okay, I was like, I don't have West Street on here. I don't have the
Should.
bridge on here yet.
All right, thank you.
All right,
Okay,
thanks.
anyone else? And back here?
Karen Haslett, I'm in a butter on Chandler Ave. I don't think this is a concern, but I just want to make sure I ask anyway. Our property lines will not change because you had a track there before. My concern is I pulled a shed down this week, and I'm having one delivered in 2 weeks, and I don't want to find out after you move in that my property line is shifted, and I have to move my shed forward 10
Property
feet.
lines haven't moved since back when the railroad was originally built.
Okay.
So, you know, if you have a surveyed line of where your property is, and
Okay.
it would be,
So
that
you're
we're
not
not
ta-
moving any.
you're not taking
We're not
any of
taking
our
any
land.
property or moving onto
Okay.
people's land.
All right,
It's
thank
within
you.
our existing property.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you. In the back?
Hi, Joe Simone, West Street, 911 West Street. I'm just curious about the velocity of the traffic and how much more train activity we're gonna have there, noise effect and that.
So no more trains than you see now. And they currently operate up to 70 miles an hour between the two stations, Norfolk and Walpole. So that would remain the same. So this does not actually add any trains, doesn't change the schedule at the moment, nor does it change the speeds they currently operate on. It just provides more operational flexibility, because there's more places for the trains to pass.
Okay, all right, so there wouldn't be a consideration for noise buffers or anything like that for the abutters that live closer to the tracks?
Not
Because of anything that
because
might
we're not changing the
affect it.
amount and speed of the trains.
Okay. Required land, that was already answered. There's not gonna be any need for any more land. Okay, and the bridges, there's two bridges coming from the center of town after the railroad station bridge. I saw them surveying those for some reason, I guess for the water situation at this point. Are those bridges gonna be addressed in any way? They
two of
are
those.
like, was
These are
just
the
mentioned.
undergrade bridge after you come out
Right
of
at
the
the s-
depot.
Right after Swan Pond.
The first bridge that you go from the depot out going to the southwest on West Street,
Yes,
that first bridge is not addressed in the bridge replacement project, but the next time you go past the gravel pit, go around the curve, the next bridge is gonna be replaced.
That's the one
but after Swan Pond, I don't know if you're familiar with Swan Pond development there. That's the
Okay.
bridge after that,
Yes, sir.
and then there's another one after that.
Yeah, it's not gonna be replaced.
Oh, okay.
The one after that was replaced back in 1994 or something like that. It's a new bridge.
Because two cars could hardly fit
I know.
under each of those bridges.
Yeah, the new design is to improve the visibility, line of sight, public safety, alignment of the bridge instead of having it dark down through there. I came through it, I went out there before the meeting, came back through it, and I was trying to sort of like playing cat and mouse, who's gonna go under first. We're not involved in the engineering design of the bridge, but there's a department within the MBTA that is working with an engineer for the design of that bridge.
for that West Street bridge.
So we don't
For
have
the one,
plans.
for the one bridge.
Yes, sir.
The first one after the railroad station.
The
Second one.
Second one after the railroad.
Okay, anything else? Get to that if it's, whenever that comes up. It's not really part of this hearing. I can understand your question, but I think they've answered that.
Okay. And I think that's about all I had to address. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Holly, can I just ask you
Yeah.
one question pertaining to that bridge? That,
West.
yeah, the West Street, my understanding is it's exempt from filing under the Wetlands Protection Act. Will there possibly be another type of forum that people could ask questions? You might want to consider that.
Sure, I can bring that to the project
Okay.
manager about, I
Great.
mean, I know they're gonna be having meetings
Right.
with Walpole about the project, but, yeah, I can bring that as a concern. As I said, we don't even have a typesetting
Right,
yet, so. So
I've been in contact where the engineers has
Oh, good.
talked to me, so I
Okay.
know that
They're
it's gonna be
getting
exempt
ready.
from the Wetlands Protection Act
Yes.
because it is a bridge. So perhaps they will have another forum if people have questions.
Yes, and we, typically, I mean, if this is of interest to the commission, we, even on those exempt bridges, are more than happy to come in and present what we're doing and discuss it. It obviously would be an informal discussion, not a permit application, but if that's something, when the time comes, we do offer that, for those exempt work.
That would be, I think, appropriate, either through this commission, so there's a public hearing, so abutters and other concerned citizens
There are
can
wetlands
ask their
nearby.
questions, so,
Thank you.
okay. Okay. Someone want to make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 400. Okay, in order, you have,
Again, I don't have any specific additional conditions.
okay,
Everything was pretty much covered. It's, all the MBTA projects are exempt from the bylaw. It's just covered in the Wetlands Protection Act.
okay. So someone make a motion for that order?
So moved.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, 400.
Okay, we have additional public hearings, so if you want to go out in the hall and discuss, that would be great.
Do you want me to take that now, or do you want to keep it? Oh, okay.
Summer Streets is our next hearing. There's a couple plans in there, or at least one that no one has one.
Are we ready? Town of Walpole notice of intent, Conservation Commission, public hearing. According to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Wetlands Protection Act, notice hereby given the intent of the MBTA to make proposed roadway, pedestrian, and signal upgrade in the right-of-way of Summer Street in Walpole. Plans on file in the Conservation Commission Office Room 212. Public hearing in the above matter will be held in the main meeting room, Walpole Town Hall, 135 School Street, April 11th, 2018, beginning 7:20 p.m. All interested persons requested to be present. Time is now 8:10. We have, it's from the Water and Sewer Commission. Board of Water and Sewer Commission reviewing information regarding the above subject, in addition to concurring with the comments from town engineer, the all-certain agreement that sleeves should be required under the track accommodating the 12-inch water main. This is from Community Planning Director. A site meeting was held with the proponent, their development team, and local officials on March 12th. Comments were provided at that time. Do you have this comment?
They're-
It wasn't pertinent to.
Right.
This is from the town engineer. Please be advised that this department has made recommendations to the MBTA to change or alter various construction items they have proposed. These are shown on the attached marked-up plan and are as follows. Marked-up plan has also been provided to town administration for forwarding to the MBTA. Relocate the proposed wheelchair ramps and crosswalk in an easterly direction to provide longer queuing distance on Summer Street. Proposed railroad swing gate should extend 3/4 distance across the road on both sides of the tracks. Provide a sleeve under the track to accommodate a future 12-inch water main. Guardrail with PVC chain link fence to extend the length of the post office lot. Pedestrian gates and stations for the swing gates should be moved back to allow for a 6-foot sidewalk. Extend the sidewalk from the proposed crosswalk all the way to Schufelt Road. Installation of an additional pedestrian gate at the easterly side of the tracks on the post office side of Summer Street. You have this information?
Actually, we do not.
You can get it from the office? Okay. Representing the applicant?
Hi, I'm Dan Canada from VHB, environmental scientist, and I have with me Sean Cullen, also from VHB, who's the project designer. He's going to talk about the existing conditions on site and the proposed construction elements that are.
I'm Sean Cullen, engineer from VHB. I'm going to talk, as Dan mentioned, about the existing grade crossing, and then the proposed safety improvements to the crossing. This is a picture of the grade crossing. We're on the north side of the crossing, looking west. You can see there's an existing bituminous sidewalk that ends at a low granite block wall along the right-of-way. This is standing on the post office side, on the south side of the crossing, looking north. You can see the existing surface. It's timber and asphalt in poor condition. This is a picture of the sidewalk that approaches on the east side of the crossing and terminates at the post office parking lot. Again, a photo from the north looking, this is the post office parking lot, the grade crossing showing the existing crossing with flashers and a gravel parking lot for the post office, that there is no delineation, no anything separating the tracks from the parking lot. So here's a colored plan showing the improvements to the grade crossing. We are extending the sidewalks on both sides to cross over the grade crossing. We will be adding pedestrian gates for both sides so that there is protection for the crossing. We're adding roadway gates to the flashers. In addition to the flashers that are out there, we're increasing the size of the flashers, 8-inch today to 12-inch to increase the visibility of the flashers. At the meeting that was mentioned in the letter from the town of Walpole, the town requested high visibility pedestrian crossing warning devices for each of the crosswalks. So we'll be adding, you've probably seen them around town. They have a standard detail for them. There's a button. It's solar powered. It has the typical signs for a grade crossing, but it's also supplemented with flashing lights to let warn cars that there are people intending to cross. And at the post office parking lot, we are adding guardrail to separate and delineate where the track right-of-way is from the space available for the post office. At the end of the guardrail, there'll be a pipe gate to restrict access from vehicles down along the right-of-way. Similar thing on the north side of the right-of-way, a pipe gate, and then there'll be a signal cabinet to control the signal equipment that we're installing. Let Dan come back and talk about the resources.
So the resources in this area are all associated with the Neponset River, both the channelized section to the north and the impounded section to the south of the roadway. There's no proposed impacts to the river itself. We do have work within the 200-foot riverfront area. Primarily, this is going to be in previously disturbed layout of the roadway. However, we are proposing the 6-foot cement sidewalk, concrete sidewalk up there. And that's going to result in a new disturbance to the riverfront of a total of 925 square feet. We do also have work in bordering land subject to flooding associated with the crosswalk there. That is not going to result in any change in flood elevations, and that's 34 square feet of work. It's just a temporary impact during the construction phase. We do propose erosion controls in that area where we are closest to the riverway there, and those will be installed along the chain link fence that is on the edge of the existing sidewalk there.
Anything else?
Additionally, we do have some other work going on along the rail within the 200-foot riverfront area. This is all related to upgrades to the existing signal system, and that is actually exempt from the Wetlands Protection Act, as it is upgrade to an existing communications system. That is addressed in the notice as well.
Okay. Landis?
I don't, I attended the meeting with MBTA and different department heads and the town administrator to go over the improvements. Since it's already previously developed area, as long as the erosion control is out there and reviewed and maintained, I don't really see any other issues other than just maintaining the erosion control. It'd be nice if you could take care of the post office parking lot, but that's probably out of your purview. So that's what really needs to be done. Other than that,
Okay.
no concerns.
Roger?
Well, I think that whatever you do here is going to be an improvement as far as the safety aspect of it. However, will there be a double track?
No, this is single track,
A single track,
yes.
for now anyway.
This is beyond the limits of the double track.
This is beyond the limits of the double track.
It's not being planned for a double track.
No.
In other words, it would
Different
seem like this would be the time to plan for it, because it probably will go in, if nothing else, for a siding in there. I don't see any particular increase in flow because, you know, of impervious surface there, so right now it looks to me that it would be nice in a way if it was over or under, but that would be a difficult problem right now. But I have no other questions at the moment.
Betsy?
No comments from me.
Al?
As I look at the plan, I see the gates for the road, and a little smaller, there's one, is that for the sidewalk, so somebody can't walk by? Is that what the?
Smaller gates, yeah.
The smaller, the high visibility pedestrian crossing gates?
Yeah,
Right here.
On the map, it looks like a triangle, a skinny triangle, yeah, okay, so I'm seeing one for the roadway, and I'm seeing one for the sidewalk. Okay, is that what that is?
This gate protects
Yeah.
this sidewalk and the roadway. This gate protects the sidewalk. This gate protects sidewalk and the roadway. And this gate protects this walking path across the post office parking lot.
So you're expecting the roadway one to do double duty, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. Okay. And compost socks down near the pond. My feeling is that it should be a little more, a little longer in each direction, because I know when people start doing construction, soil and sediments get spread out more than just a couple of feet on each side of the job.
Okay. Yeah, that can be done.
Do you have anything else, Al?
No, that's all.
Do you have any filtration socks going into the catch basins, that
Yes.
Yeah, there would be a silt sacks going in there, yeah.
the ones that are by the dam?
Yes.
Yeah, it would be all the ones
You
in the
got
front.
some on
All
that,
within the project limits, yes.
all right, the project,
There's a basin here and a basin here.
okay, and there's a basin further to the east.
I'm sorry.
Which side of the,
Well,
down in that area?
beyond
that way, yeah.
something we
We're
could
looking
add.
there. We could add that,
Yeah, because that, its flow is down in that direction, so you're gonna be working there if you add those to the catch basins that are further to the east there. Okay, did you consider either going under or over Summer Street?
No, that wasn't, just improvements to the existing crossing. It's a crossing now. But not aware of any plans for grade separation.
Okay. All right. Anyone in the audience has any questions or comments, please identify yourself for the record.
Hi, Ryan Weiss. I live at 40 Neponset Street. Is there a possibility or any talks about that being a quiet zone? I know in the Greenbush line, the townspeople as well as the various towns pushed for that to be a quiet zone. Safety is obviously of utmost importance in that area, especially with the school. I have children, so I have a child, but I know now, right now, it's there's bells as well as the trains, blow their horns when they go by. So would that continue with the safety upgrades, or is that something that would be considered?
That would be continued with the safety upgrades. The quiet zone would be a separate.
We can answer that. We have on the railroads perspective.
We're playing tag, you're it. So Clary Coutu again from Keolis. So to establish a quiet zone, it's a major process. So what we can do is send you the information, because you have to go to legislature. It's a Federal Railroad Authority requirement, and the reason why there's noise, there's horns, and they blow the horns is because throughout every crossing you need that for the safety, not only of the passengers and the commuters, but also the community residents. So what we can do, what I can do is take your information and send you an email that details the MBTA Mass DOT processes that you need to go through. And it's a process where the town has to discuss in global, because how many crossings do we have through Walpole? We have a few.
Yes.
So if you establish a quiet zone, it impacts the entire town. So it has to be a town-wide effort brought to legislature. Does that answer?
And funding,
And
usually by the
funding.
town.
Yeah. So it's a big process that impacts safety.
I just had one more question then. Is there safety in the, is there any proposal from the MBTA to do anything regarding like having crossing guards for the students who will be going by the?
I'm not sure about that, but I know there are discussions with the town to bring Operation Lifesaver into the schools and do a program for that. And I believe they've been in discussions with some of the town management to do that. So they will be bringing that in to the schools.
Okay. I think that's all.
Right, so bringing up those concerns just as well with the town administrator would be
Okay.
the office that would address issues such as that.
Okay.
I have a question. Has there been any review with the fire and police
Yes.
departments regarding the closing off of the street when trains go by?
That's the existing condition today. We're adding more safety devices to it. We had a site walk with the town of Walpole, at which time there were representatives from both the police and the fire department. They made some of the comments to add crosswalks to both sides of the crossing. So we definitely have been getting input from the fire and police in town.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
I'm Julianne Belcher. I live at 15 Ponset Street. My concern is about the waterway.
Okay.
And under the construction, I guess I get what you were saying, John, about putting more protection down. You were talking about that. But, I mean, I don't know the extent that it sounds like you're gonna be digging up a lot of stuff. Like digging up the whole road, right, in that area? It's substantial
In the
construction,
area of the
right?
crossing?
Yes. You're gonna like put a whole new road there, right?
No, for the majority of the work.
Within that gray box.
That
So-
gray box, right?
Yep.
Right
So that,
here.
okay, And
This
how-
will be paving,
yeah,
and here we are adding sidewalk
right.
and sidewalk. So there are some work, but I wouldn't consider it substantial.
Okay, so then, when all that's in place and everything, and people wanna just go for a walk, it's just gonna be open unless a train comes.
Correct.
Yes.
It'll just
Yes.
automatically close and that will
Gates
be
only
it.
come down.
And it'll make noise and do whatever it does. To
Correct,
say, here comes the
yes.
train.
And
Yeah.
robots, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So I'm just, again, the other thing is just the impact of that construction on the neighbors in that area with the, when is it gonna happen, how long is it gonna take, and the impact it would have on the water that's right there,
Sure.
coming right down, like
And I think
in
we've
my
talked-
backyard. I don't know what you're doing to protect that.
Sure,
You
and
could
we've
talk
talked-
about that a little bit more.
Sure. We're putting the
Silt socks in the existing catch basins.
silt socks in the existing catch basins. Where we're excavating in the floodplain, we're putting a silt, a compost tube.
Which
right
the
there.
commission asked we extend, so.
Yes,
we'll
asked
make
us
that
to
longer.
extend. And the limit, the excavation is over here.
Yeah.
Excavation over here on the other side of the road. And then some in here to install this cement concrete walkway in front of the post office. We'll extend this down here to protect anything going this way. And the silt sacks and the catch basins protect anything runoff on the roadway.
Can I ask one more question also, where is your staging area? So when you're taking up the road, where are you stockpiling it, or where is your equipment going to be located during the construction?
During construction? Sure. For the grade crossing, there is a considerable amount of right-of-way here. So there's room available in disturbed gravel area, extends up to the top of the page. So there's room to stockpile materials there. The work in the roadway can be done with its conventional rubber-tied construction equipment that can be moved off-site during construction.
So your staging area will be on the
right-of-way.
Side that's furthest away from the pond.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So any stockpile material should be also ringed with erosion control.
Okay, around it.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, anything else? Okay, we'll make a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, 4-0 vote. Order and extending the erosion control with additional silt socks and staging and stockpiling and storing of equipment. So, someone make that a motion? So moved. Any further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, 4-0 vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh. That wasn't too bad. We could have done that in our regular meeting room.
Yeah. Is that why we moved to a different room?
Yeah.
Yeah, just anticipated more interest.
Oh.
I think it's easier for the people to see with the
Yeah.
camera and that, with the pictures than we can do in that other room.
Yeah.
And it was, we were really the only public forum for people to ask questions.
Mhm. That I didn't realize.
It's one
I didn't.
reason.
Okay, so I
People
understand.
think
Yeah. I didn't realize we were the only forum.
I wasn't aware either initially. I had no other way to vent.
Just gonna put it like a permanent spot on the agenda for you, is that okay?
I'm a regular now.
You show up regularly, you charge for it.
Well, that's,
Just the minimum.
What do we, is formal? Is this
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 is a
issue?
minor modification, a request for minor modification for Boyden Estates Lot 5.
okay, nothing to read in there.
Nothing to read.
Okay, Mr. Petrosi.
Just a file.
thank you, Lou Petrosi for Wall Street Development. I'm here tonight to ask the commission for a minor modification to the previous order of conditions that was issued for Lot 5, Boyden Lane. Essentially, we've, what you see on the top plan was the original approved plan. It seems that the orientation of the house was, doesn't lend itself to creating a good neighborhood environment for the houses as they surround the cul-de-sac, so we've decided to
the house back a little bit and make it more parallel to Boyden Lane rather than parallel to the cul-de-sac as it was previously proposed. And essentially that, to do the proper site grading, we've moved the erosion control further back to just outside the 25-foot no disturb zone, as you see along the line here. Previously, it was up in this area here. So that's really the change that we're asking for.
So the change in this plan, there's additional buffer zone that will be cleared and graded down to the 25-foot no alteration area, is that?
Yeah, well, the grading actually is going to be just slightly beyond what was previously shown. But there's going to be some tree removal in this area because, again, the trees are so tall that you can't, we really wouldn't want to have them overhanging next to a house. So we're going to clear that to the, we're going to reinstall.
It looks like you have a little more driveway area as well. And is the how is the driveway sloping?
The driveway slopes a little bit further down from the roadway down. I believe the
because there's quite a slope there now, so.
Yeah, the top of the concrete of the foundation is at the same elevation that what it was originally proposed. The roadway is at 242, and the top of foundation is proposed to be 242. So, but there will be a slight, as you see in the front yard, there'll be a slight grading, because usually there's about 2 feet of concrete exposed. We could raise the foundation higher and make it a little bit higher than the roadway.
I'm more concerned with the water flowing down Boyden Lane into the driveway and down the slope.
We would be concerned about that too. We don't want water coming from here down here.
Right, so there's a hump.
Yeah, we'll make sure that the sidewalk stops here. So, I believe, and so we would make sure that there's some sort of a lip to the driveway or a berm to the driveway that keeps water from going onto that, because that, as you know from what we've had to deal with, it's a relatively, there's more grade there than you can tell.
It's all downhill.
Yeah, it's all downhill, right.
It's all downhill, and it's more of a path downhill
Yeah.
than the original plan, so.
But again, the backyard is pretty much a walkout basement, just like previously the walkout basement was in this side of the house. Now it's more in the back of the house. And it's gonna lend itself better to grading the lot so that there's, it's not as steep a situation as you see it today. It's not gonna be, and it will create a better situation for the house location.
Anything else?
The question is this a minor modification, or should it be an amendment, or is it?
Land change.
Roger, any questions?
No.
Betsy?
I don't think so, because most of the house looks like it's still outside of the 100 foot. So
Yeah, the house is just a little corner of it
yeah.
encroaches
So
in.
it's, but there's gonna be a change in the lawn, right? So more lawn back there, right?
Yeah, there's gonna be some more lawn in this area here, more, say, in the 50-foot to 100-foot area than in the,
So probably our usual plaques are in order, so that
Right.
if people are gonna be walking out onto their lawn and then
Yeah.
walking further with,
we have those plaques on the plan at the 25-foot
Oh,
zone. So we
yeah,
have
yeah,
those, we
yes.
have those in already.
okay, okay,
And they were in on the original plan as
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
so
yeah.
it's just a little bit more backyard for the homeowner.
okay. That's it.
And we will, as part of this process, be reinstalling the erosion control and repairing the other areas that have been noted by the agent over the past few days.
Anything else, Spencer?
No,
Al?
No, I don't have an issue with this.
Okay.
I think it's a minor change.
Is that the sewer line that's going through part of the house?
You know,
That's
I
the-
think that was the previous,
That's the old sewer.
the old line that they showed. It's not there anymore because now the sewer line goes down here. So. But that, I'm glad you picked that up because we would not be doing that, putting that sewer line through the house.
Yeah, I would think that you'd wanna move that. Okay, so I see the sewer in the street comes
Yeah.
down,
If you look on there's the sewer and water service around this, the left-hand corner of the house.
where is it, this sewer line then goes to the street
Right,
below?
yeah, this is the sewer line in
Yeah,
here.
okay, then where's it go from there?
Goes down the easement.
And then it goes out,
Then it goes out towards
To,
the back of the property, wherever,
it connects that street off of Winter
Right,
Street.
it
Right.
goes through the wetlands
Okay.
and then
right.
Okay, all
it was
right.
put in with
Yeah, you
Evans
wanna
Way.
take that line off your
Yeah,
plan.
I will, I didn't even pick that up, I'm sorry.
Okay, all right, someone make that a motion for a minor, change?
So moved.
second?
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained. 4-0-0.
Thank you.
Okay, so minor.
You wanna talk about Boyden, or am I off the hook?
Well, while you're here, we have anything else to discuss with the code?
Yeah, we had asked Mr. Petrosi to submit a report on the erosion and sedimentation issues that have been occurring at Boyden Estates, and also to address the issue of the flow going through the replication area and down Boyden Street, Boyden Lane, which was not previously represented on the existing conditions plan for the subdivision.
Yes, well, as I mentioned in my memorandum, that we did some, we took some measures to alleviate, it was our observations when we were on the site that the replication area was constructed not according to the plan, and that the base of the replication area needed to be raised, as well as the berm around the replication area and sloping to the roadway. We've taken those measures, and we had the experience of the 2 or 3 winter storms that we had in end of February and the first 2 weeks of March. And as you see in the photographs, that there was no erosion or overflow of that replication area. So we know that those measures are working. What still needs to be done, and it's way too muddy because of the weather conditions, the rest of the replication area needs to be graded. I think we graded the part that was closest to the roadway, that was easily accessible with a piece of equipment. But I think the rest of the replication area needs to be kind of settled with all the soils that we put in there. That soil's settled. The plants need to be replanted with new, and the elevation raised. And then that will keep the flow, the replication area, functioning the way it's supposed to function. We did also do some clean out around the culvert that we installed. And what you had mentioned in your email yesterday or today, there is like a sump that was created. You know, he went in there and cleaned it out, created like a little sump in front of the culvert so that any debris would not just, you know, flow through the culvert, but that the water would collect there, and as the water rises, it'll flow through. So that's why you see a little ponding area there right now. But there is more work to be done. We're just waiting for some drier conditions to finish up what needs to be done, and then we'll get it all hydroseeded and stabilized the way it's growing, the way it's supposed to. And in connection with this work that we're going to be doing on Lot 5, we'll be reinstalling silt sock along the areas where there might be some breakthroughs, and we're going to rake out whatever sediment might have encroached within the erosion control barriers. So that's all in the works. We're just trying to get to a point where we have conditions that allow people to go in there either with equipment or their own hands.
Yeah, the sediments need to be
Yeah, it's a hand
and the
work.
erosion control can be replaced now.
Right.
But my concern that still hasn't been addressed is when the plans were submitted for Boyden Estates, they were submitted with the flow of the water appeared to just go in the culvert that was replaced. That all the water that came down from Kevin's Way direction came through the wetlands and then went through that existing culvert under the driveway and then into the isolated wetlands and then somehow disappeared into the ground and went off to the wetlands lower down. But it appears that there was also a path that went further down the driveway from the existing culvert that you replaced, through where the replication area is now, and then under the driveway through another PVC pipe and headed off down towards where the basin is. So now you have all the water directing into the path of the isolated wetlands. And what effect does that have? I mean, I think we were concerned in general that if there was going to be a lot of water going into that little isolated wetlands, what impact it would have on flooding conditions, as well as what it kind of looks like there may be two paths of the water, two sub-watershed directions, one going towards the stream where the sewer crossing is, and the other going further up. So,
well, I've brought this up.
Changing the flow patterns.
I've brought this discussion up with the project engineer at GLM, and he doesn't think that that's the issue that should be concerned at this point, because
well,
it's all
it is
operating.
because it's a change in conditions that wasn't represented at the public hearing, and
I don't know what the remedy to that is. If he's gonna run his calculations again and come up with some, I mean, how much difference in flow do you think there is that might be this alteration of, in fact, you know, from my point of view, I would prefer the water to go the other way, like the way it was overtopping the driveway and go towards the detention basin, because ultimately that would dry up that wetland on that side. So if we do that, I think that's what will happen. That wetland will shrink. If you remember when I first approached the commission about filling that in and creating a much bigger replication.
No, we're talking about maintaining the sub-watersheds the way they were during existing conditions, not taking water from one and putting it towards the other.
I understand.
It's the maintaining of the conditions that you're not doing right now.
I don't know the answer to that question. I've asked
Well, I think that needs
the
to be
project
addressed.
engineer to.
Well, where is he?
Can
He
I-
was supposed to come tonight. You told me
He
he
said
was
he
gonna
called
come.
you today at lunch. You didn't answer, so.
Can I make a suggestion?
I think this needs to be addressed. I don't think that berming the replication area is addressing the situation long-term. I think it may be addressing the situation short-term, but I don't think it's addressing the conditions that are out there long-term.
So if I, not to cut you, so the alternative, from what I understand the situation, if we pursue this down the road, is that to restore the flow, we would leave the replication area where it is, and if there was any excess runoff or water in that area, that water would be allowed to escape that area like it was a wetland, like it will operate, and somehow go in the direction of the detention basin, either through a pipe, which was there before, or into the catch basin, into a pipe, and into the detention basin, which would then go. So I'm more than happy to do that if you want that, but I don't see the other alternative being changing the whole schematic of the replication area. I think the replication area is going to work fine. Whether or not you want flow to be split and go in the two different directions, or whether or not you want it to go, that's commission, you know,
So-
it's up to the commission.
Yeah, I want to suggest that if somehow the calculations were not done correctly to begin with because Rob Truax had missed some additional flow, then Rob should come and address that and explain why he thinks that is not a major deal, and should do the recalculations, and if it turns out that the drainage basin is just fine for that, all right, but I think we need to sort of get back to a slightly cleaner slate here with Rob,
I'm
and not stopgap measures, because your letter seems like it's a list of, we tried this, we tried that, we tried this, we tried that, but actually, if there's some flow that wasn't recognized initially, now it has to be recognized, recalculated, and see whether.
Well, I'm at a
Yeah.
disadvantage here because I've asked him to look at this, and he says there is, as we say in our letter, that there's no change in flow.
He should come before us and say that, because he's the engineer who calculated it to begin with, so.
I will bring him and I will have.
Well, I would say at this point, the order of conditions is not in compliance because there is other information that was not brought forward that since then has been brought forward, and you haven't addressed it yet, so.
So let me just, while we're having the discussion here, just so the replication area is located in this area, and the flow that we're talking about went across the driveway was for lot 3, that's where the existing house is, and it went down in this direction, which is now towards the detention basin. Let's assume that there is flow that you want us to sort of reproduce in terms of the calculations. Is it the commission's discretion to reestablish that flow via some sort of a pipe, or would you simply say?
We don't know yet till it gets all recalculated, and then Rob comes and presents something.
We're really talking about a minimal flow here, so, I don't.
You know what size pipe was in there?
It was like a 4 or 6 inch PVC, like flex pipe that just ran underneath his driveway. We're not talking about a lot of flow here, and
Right.
I don't think it's unless the commission is of the frame of mind that you want to reestablish that pipe connection into the drainage system. I'm not quite sure what the goal would be to
But
go
here's
through
the
this
problem, we can't
exercise.
just do it on the fly without the engineer here with the plan. So it can't be like, oh yeah, let's put that pipe in.
We've had many, trust me, I'm not flying off the cuff. I've had many discussions about this. We've met on the site with Landis, I've met on the site with
And I
the
keep on saying
project
the
engineer.
same thing, present to the commission
Right.
the existing conditions that wasn't shown on the
Right.
original plan, and
I'm just playing out the scenario. I just want feedback from the commission. If we do the calculations and it's whatever the flow is the commission of the frame of mind that they want this pipe to go back underneath the driveway and into the catch basin, which would then flow into the detention basin, or is it more comfortable with directing the water into the wetland, which will better sustain the wetland?
We won't know till you bring the whole thing back to us. So it shouldn't be like these little piecemeal
Okay.
things. Yeah.
Those are the two, it's
you're not-
whatever the
you're
flow of
not
water is.
taking water away from that was going to the wetland originally, because it wasn't going that way. We're talking about the water that was going the other way,
Right, so now,
that's the
I
issue.
guess, I mean, as I said earlier, we're taking water that wasn't necessarily going to the wetland, it was going overland. We're now, if what we've done stands, we're now directing more water to the wetland across the other side of the street, which, in my estimation, would be enhancing the wetland versus diminishing the flow there,
Wetland you want it to be filled in because it's an isolated wetlands in someone's front yard, and you think that's.
If it was isolated, I would have filed for an isolated, but we determined that it wasn't isolated.
Right, okay, a finger wetland, you're right.
It's a finger length,
Right.
yeah.
My concern is, what's the impact of putting more water there, because
honestly,
potentially
it would be
already
better
an
for me to
issue.
fill it and replicate like a big larger chunk of wetland down in here and give you twice as much, so.
So for the next meeting, Rob should come with calculations and.
I will reprimand him again. I did ask him to call, I have asked him to call Landis several times to discuss this, and.
No, but I mean, come to the meeting, to the commission.
I know, but he has to come prepared to the meeting,
Well, he
Maybe I'm not.
prepares with the information that possibly should have been presented early on, and how he's gonna address it.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Okay,
simple.
I'm doing the best I can. I'm trying to.
You mean he's not available to come to meetings?
I think he is, but can you put him on first? When's the next meeting? 20?
Well, we have a horrible meeting the next meeting. I mean, a fun meeting the next meeting.
All right, let's plan for like the first weekend, meeting in May.
I thought the directive at our last meeting was that you were to come to this meeting with this issue.
Yeah.
Well,
That's what my understanding was.
Right, but I've reviewed this with him, and he reviewed the letter, the memo, and his contribution was that, based on the work that we did, that everything was working according to the plan, and that there was no change in
But
flow.
the plan was not correct, and that's
Well,
the issue. The
you know,
plan was not correct. You
I
have
don't-
to submit correct information so
I
it
don't
can be
know who-
reviewed.
you know,
And we don't operate that way with the engineer passing information, like everything seems to be okay through another person.
No, I understand, but they stamped the plan, and it's our job to build it according to the plan. Now, if the original problem arose because we didn't do something according to the plan, and we now go back and we do it so that it is in compliance with the plan and everything works, then who's wrong in this equation? Is it?
Okay, what we have
So-
is, it was incorrect information or insufficient information with the original filing.
Yeah.
And we want him to address that.
Okay.
Now, whether it, and what change, if any, would be, and I think choices, alternatives would be appropriate.
Okay.
What alternatives are there to address that? Then it can come before us, and we can decide what sounds like the best way to resolve the issue.
Yes.
So, if you will, get back to him and advise him
I will.
that it is information that was not correctly presented originally. And that we want that, as
Okay.
if it was a new presentation, to include that information, and he suggests as alternatives to address that.
Okay.
Okay? So
Yep.
we've got, our April 25th meeting is probably, gonna be busy if it's, if everybody, all these hearings show up and they're not continued. So we're gonna make it to,
May 23rd is the next after, because
What's-
of town meeting.
Mr. Chairman, is it possible that I could have him submit the information directly to Landis, because Landis would review it, and if she thinks it's necessary to come back to the commission, we'll come back at the first meeting in May. If not, if Rob has, if GLM presents information and has discussion with Landis, and Landis has some sort of agreement or disagreement, then we come back to the commission.
So you mean,
You've been doing this for a long time, and I'm prepared not to sign off on any building permits that come in front of me until this is addressed.
also, I have a
I
comment.
don't know how many times to say this, that this needs to be addressed. It's been said for months.
all right,
Also, I have a suggestion for Amy for the minutes, because I'm looking back at the minutes, and it's okay that the minutes for most enforcement orders are terse. This one, I think, let's, for the minutes for this one, let's really reflect that we said we want Rob Truex to come, because it doesn't quite say that, and I know we said it, just like, let's say it so that, because I just looked back to say, what did we say? I suppose we could look at the meeting tape, but, because I feel like we're saying this stuff over and over again.
But I understand, but
all right. I think we've settled this, that we have town meeting on the 7th, and our next meeting is the 9th, so that probably will go to that meeting, so we don't have the 9th. So the next meeting after that is the 23rd.
May 23rd?
May 23rd. So.
We'll try and get something to you before your next meeting.
You can get some information in to us, whether he wants us, we can put it on the agenda for April 25th. It's probably gonna be, very likely, very late.
That's okay, I'd rather be on
No, I'm
and
not.
and have the information presented or submitted to the board, and then I like coming to meetings. So, what can I say?
All right, so you want to be put on for our last hearing. We have a bunch of hearings, they're all bunched up, so it's 7:45, but I'm sure we are not going to be done
Okay.
with that. I would say,
Which date?
oh, it's that one.
Will be at least 10 o'clock.
So you want to put him on April 25th?
Yeah,
Um,
sooner the better.
Yeah, well, let's get it done. Let's, if we put it off, then he'll
Yeah.
just.
So I would say we're looking, if you want to put a time down, 8:30.
Yep.
And it may be later,
Sure, no problem.
so you're aware of that. So put this for 8:30 on April 25th for discussion.
Great, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll chain them up and we'll bring them.
Okay,
We'll have the information ahead of time.
yeah, we need whatever is being presented, that we need, so we have time to look it over. Right?
Absolutely. Right, thank you.
Okay. Is there anything you wanted to discuss on Burns Avenue or not? Was that all done? Did you finish the work at Burns Avenue?
Right now, the environmental people are waiting for the paperwork to come back from the disposal sites that we're going to.
Okay. You did the excavation, removed the material. Did you find any additional?
No.
Okay,
No.
so what you excavated is all that needs to be excavated?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, we're trying to, because of the wetness of the site, it was difficult for us to try and bring material in there, and we weren't ready to, we can't haul the material out until the disposal sites review the paperwork, and accept the material. So we've, at the present time, the excavations are open with caution tape around the excavations. I was down there tonight. We're gonna try and, it looks like it's dry enough that we might be able to do it Friday. But I looked at the forecast tonight, it's supposed to rain a little bit tomorrow too, so the weather is what's keeping us from backfilling the holes. But the removal of the excavated material is being held up because they haven't given us the go-ahead yet to truck it off-site yet.
Okay.
So, they told me the other day that it was just a few more days to, before, you know,
Okay.
they should have that in a few days, but
Okay.
it's muddy, and we don't wanna be tracking that stuff all over the place.
Okay.
Okay,
Good enough.
thank you.
Okay. What else? All right, we got, no, we don't know what. Northwood Ventures, isn't ready yet. Main Street needs replanning, so that's not ready. All right, we have a certificate of compliance for 315-996. Oh, I'm sorry. You're with?
Mike.
From?
Michael Peterson, I'm the guy on that one.
On, oh, okay. On 315-996? Okay, it says it's okay. It's okay?
It's
This
okay.
one?
Which one are you doing?
On,
Northridge?
Carl Road?
Carl Road.
Yes. So it was
Certificate of
a
compliance.
upgrade of a septic system.
Okay, that's okay.
That's okay, you can issue it.
Did
Wait, there's an
you
inspection.
want to comment? Wonder why we're doing it, or do you just want to wait for our vote? Okay, you don't have anything to add, okay. Someone make that a motion to issue a certificate of compliance?
So what is this?
It's the third
The
one.
third one.
Northridge Ventures?
No, 44 Carl Road.
Carl Road.
Was a repair of a septic system. Certificate of compliance request.
Says it's okay, Lana says it's okay.
Yeah, I don't see anything on
Right
it.
there, Carl Road.
Oh,
Landis says it's okay.
oh,
So we'll make that a motion?
I'll move it.
You get a second? Any further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, 400.
Amanda says it's okay, it's okay.
Is that what you're here for?
Yeah, rumor really is,
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Request for extensions.
The request for extensions for 8 Lasipita Drive, it's an order for a pool, and they just haven't got around to doing it yet, as well as 20 Lasipita Drive, they're both.
Okay, so we'll do Lot 2, Lasivita Drive. If someone make that a motion for a 12-month extension.
I'll move that.
You got a second?
Roger?
Second.
Okay.
Any further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, 400. And a 12-month extension for Lot 5, Lasivita Drive. Wouldn't want to move that?
I'll move that.
You got a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, 400. are still on TV, right?
Yep, we
We're
are.
all aware that we have 2 vacancies on the commission. If anybody knows anybody who's interested, or anybody watching in the audience, if they're interested in joining the commission, contact the Board of Selectmen's office at the Town Hall. We have 2 open positions.
Okay, and you did the civil design group, the request for certificate of compliance, that's Cumbies, and they need to do some more plantings in the riverfront area. So I was recommending that to be issued.
We passed those 2.
Okay, all right, in
Northridge, we
yeah.
passed. So we did the extensions and the 1 certificate.
So you're on board comments?
Board comments, we got Pemberton Street.
Right, this is 2-lot subdivision with no wetlands resources.
No land
Bye.
disturbance permit required?
No, it's small, it's one of those existing house, another house and just a driveway, so they're not proposing to alter over 40,000
Okay.
square feet.
Okay, so that's, okay, nothing there. 1350 North Street. This is the old house. There was a woman here that was, you have a question?
Oh, yeah. Am I all set? I don't need anything from you folks, so
Yeah.
just go through the channels.
Right, well, you're all set, so they voted the certificate of compliance, and then we just need to process it in the office, and then it'll go out,
Excellent.
okay?
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you for waiting. The woman who owns the house, the property, was here a month or 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be, the place is gonna be demolished.
Yep.
And the extension from the Historical Commission expires sometime in May, I believe.
Yep.
So, I would think from looking at that lot that they would require a land disturbance permit. So, I think it's more than 40,000 square feet.
Yep.
So, Rustic Road,
Rustic Road is, this one Rustic Road is, there's no jurisdiction.
any potential there that there might exceed 40,000 square feet for a,
No, it's for a. It's an in-law. It's just an in-law.
okay, so no jurisdiction, okay. No jurisdiction there. Okay. What else do we have? Do you have anything else?
And then 100 High Street also, that's ZBA, what's that for, Amy? On High Street. I can't remember, but it didn't look like, as the plan showed, that there would be needing anything, but if they were going to be clearing more land area that they would possibly require.
Right, so
So,
depending on what they're.
yeah, there's resources nearby, but it didn't look like they were gonna be close to the resource areas, but it's sometimes hard to tell with the zoning board plans. You can just let them know that.
Okay. Anybody have anything else?
I'm planning to be, well, we have Monday off, but I'm planning to also take Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, so I won't be in the office, but I'll be checking my email, and I'm sure Amy will call me if anything pops up that she needs help with, and,
Good for you, have a good vacation.
yeah, just,
You're gonna be planning to come in Fridays?
yeah, I'm gonna come in Friday because the, Chesia
Chesia.
report is due on
That's the
Fridays.
end? Okay.
Are you running in the marathon or something, or?
Yeah, I'm running the marathon.
Yeah.
No, you do have marathons.
School
I know, I
vacation.
have run in the marathon, not the Boston Marathon, but marathons, but no, but thanks for asking.
Okay, I guess on that,
I'd have to take much more time off if I was.
just see how that report looks then, I
Well,
guess.
let's shut it- shut
Yeah,
off
as soon as the report comes in, I will send it out. I can send copies out to.
Okay. All right, someone make a motion
Move to adjourn.
Second? All in favor,
Ready?
aye?
All in favor, yes, we did.
No? All right.